Hello and welcome to the Ohio Arts Council's Riffe Gallery. This is the exhibition tour for Quilt National 2025, and I am here with exhibitions director from the Dairy Barn, Erin Mckenna. Welcome, Erin. We're so excited to have you. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the Dairy Barn and Quilt National. So, Erin, tell me. What's the history of the Dairy Barn and Quilt National? They're pretty intertwined, right?
They are indeed, yes. So the Dairy Barn is located in Athens, Ohio, about an hour and a half from Columbus. The Dairy Barn was founded as a nonprofit art institution in 1978. But prior to that, it was built in 1914 for the Athens Mental Health Hospital. And it was a working dairy barn from 1914 to the mid-1960s. At its kind of peak moment, it had over 200 cows. And the goal of the barn was to produce 2 cups of milk per patient per day.
Wow, okay.
And it was also used as a work therapy barn too. So in the 1960s, laws changed. Patients were not allowed to work there. Farming practices changed, and the labor force really kind of deteriorated at the barn, and it just sat vacant for 10 years. It was slated to be torn down, and a group of artists led by Harriet and Ora Anderson stepped in. Legend has it that these artists linked arms, stood between the building and the bulldozer, and saved the Dairy Barn for what it is known today as the Cultural Arts Center. So that was in 1978. It is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is a nonprofit art center. And then the following year, the first exhibition was there called Quilt National, which is what we're celebrating today too. So it happens every other year on odd years.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about why did they do Quilt National?
Yeah.
What was the impetus?
Yes, okay. I think before we talk about that, we should talk a little bit about quilts in general, right?
Yeah.
Just like the traditional quilt.
Please.
So the definition of a quilt is, a quilt is a textile object, most commonly kind of known as utilitarian object. It has 3 layers. There is a top piece made out of usually pieced fabric, which means fabric of different colors, different patterns are cut up into most of the time geometric shapes. Think squares and triangles. They're arranged into a composition, sewn together at the seam, and that's the top piece. The middle piece is batting, so traditionally wool, now it's sometimes polyester or cotton. And then the back piece is called the backing. So there's 3 layers. You can kind of imagine that sandwich. They're all stacked together. And then the quilting happens. So quilting is either done by hand or by machine. And it is a needle and thread, and it pierces through all 3 layers of fabric, and it joins them all together.
So we have a noun and a verb.
Exactly, yes.
Excellent.
Yes. And then at the very end, there's binding that goes around the edge that wraps all those raw edges of fabric together to make it more sturdy.
Okay, but Quilt National has some clear guidelines that push a little bit against the historic idea of a quilt, but
yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, okay. So the founders of Quilt National were 3 artists, Nancy Crow, Virginia Randalls, and Francois Barnes. And they were artists, and they were using methods of quilting, but they were making quilts that were not getting into traditional quilt shows. And they were told that their colors were too bold, their patterns were too wild, you know, they weren't like tight enough. So these 3 women decided they wanted to start their own show that were like essentially looking at quilts in the context of art. It's the same way we would look at a painting, right? So there's always been kind of a history of quilts and kind of crafts in general that have seen kind of as low art versus fine art as high art. So I think these women were trying to elevate quilt making to be on the same conversation as fine art.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in Quilt National, the definition of a quilt for us is instead of 3 layers, we only require 2 layers of fabric or fabric-like material. So tree bark, plastic, negative from film, like anything could be considered a fabric-like material. And then those 2 layers have to be either sewn together or somehow fused together.
Right.
Yeah, but scale doesn't matter, material doesn't matter. We really want people to push the boundaries.
So I love knowing that history of Quilt National because they didn't have a seat at the table, so they made their own table. Mm-hmm. But not only did they make their own table, they were thinking about their mark in history and how they could help uplift an art form. Mm-hmm. And So let's talk a little bit about that impact. Like,
Yeah.
this is a world-renowned exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
Folks submit from all over the globe, literally.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what's the impact of that?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. So Quilt National, again, started in 1979. We're approaching almost our 50th anniversary. So I do like to think about kind of, what's happened in the past almost 50 years. And I think maybe because of Quilt National, but also in other art institutions, craft is really being recognized as conceptually rigorous and really starting to be talked about like on the same plane as fine art, which I think is long overdue. So
Absolutely.
That's really exciting.
Should we talk about some art?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Okay.
So let's start with this quilt just over here.
Yes.
So tell us about it.
Yes, this is Julie Smith. It's called Sweet Tooth. This is actually a great introduction because this person is referencing traditional quilt blocks with these little triangle squares. It looks referencing like the flying geese pattern. But this artist is taking on a much more kind of painterly approach. So taking that pattern, changing the colors, shifting it on different axes. There's a lot of painterly qualities, even with like the texture of the color and the texture of the thread. So this is a great introduction to kind of honoring heritage quilts, but pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. Giving us a really great view of how complex and precise a piece can be.
Mm-hmm.
And what a great kind of ombre of colors. They like start with these really super bright, ultra chromatic dashes of color and into the more muted. It's just phenomenally done.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have a really big quilt that we're going to pop over to that you need some space to look at. And this one is Emerging Artist Award.
Yes.
So that's a really big deal.
Yes.
Tell us about this piece.
Yeah, this is Lori Paquin. She's a Canadian artist. First of all, the scale of this is quite impressive. We're almost 6 feet tall. It's quite large. The other thing that is technically incredible about this, usually when you think quilts, you think very rigid geometric patterns, squares and triangles. This piece, all of the shapes that were cut out and pieced together are curves. I don't think I see a single straight line in this. So sewing curves together and then opening them up, ironing them and trying to get them flat is very, very difficult. And this happens over and over again. So the technical, it's really incredible here how everything lays so flat. This piece is machine quilted. So you can see, if you're up close, you can see all of these horizontal lines. I think this machine quilting works well for this one because it kind of adds this layer of texture that does not take away from the formal composition. So as we're looking at this kind of from further away too, I really look at this as a painting, right? I look at this composition, I feel, because there's so many curves, it really feels very buoyant and uplifting. No matter where I start to look, all of these curves just guide my eye, like swoop me through this beautiful composition. I like to float up to the top and then gracefully, like my eye can fall back down.
Absolutely.
I feel like I just can get lost in this composition.
Yeah, it's very musical. It's almost jazz-like.
Yes.
You know, the like dominance of that to your subdominant to you know, these accents that are coming through and really, as you said, taking the viewer's eye fully around this piece. It becomes a little anthropomorphized in that, like, the movement of it, you imagine they could like pop off and move.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's come around and have a look at this piece over here. So this had phenomenal, you know, artistry in the curve that they were using. This one, let's talk about color. This one,
Yes.
whoo, buddy.
Yes. This is Shinhi Lee. It's called the Sea. The technique in this one is applique, and then there's also some hand painting done. And yes, the artist really wanted to talk about the color of the ocean and like kind of that up at the top of the water versus way down deep below. And there is this beautiful red fabric as the background. So in between these blue rectangles, we see this bright contrasting pop of red, which is really exciting. And then as a composition, these fish swimming and how it really starts to break these straight lines of the grid. Yeah, it just really feels, it's so strange how these rectangles really start to become like water, like fluid like water.
Absolutely. And something that for the folks that just adore color and color theory, this juxtaposition of complementary and tertiary colors then start to scintillate. So when you're looking at it for a while, they fight for dominance. So that bright red is going to try and pop forward where the green is also doing that. So they just do this for your eyes, and it's just such a treat to see that really rigid structure then break down into this flow here, and how the artist so smartly puts these fish-like shapes on top of that to even further accentuate it. And so then there becomes a little bit of like a abstract kind of ideation of being over a pond or something, like watching a school of fish.
Yeah, and that like
really
the glinting
lovely
light, you can almost see the fish moving in this piece. Yeah.
All right, let's
great.
pop on over.
Excellent.
Talking about the amazing quality of blocks coming together.
Yes, this is Jongyung Lee, Encounter of Lines and Surfaces. This piece really stuns everyone. This is made of very, very thin material. It's almost see-through. Like when you come in person, I would recommend taking a look at the shadow on the wall. The
shadow is stunning.
And there's even like this slight color to it too. It's really beautiful. So this work is not sewn together, rather the artist used a soldering iron. So the material is kind of like an organza, it's like a plasticky material. So the soldering iron actually melts and fuses the pieces in layers together. And this, I mean, it's very akin to stained glass, I would say.
Absolutely.
The colors are beautiful, and then you got these really beautiful moments of the pops of reds and oranges. It just, man, I want to look at a piece 10 feet by 10 feet, right? You know?
Yeah. This is one of those pieces that, similar to the last piece we were chatting about and how optical illusions start to happen, the same thing happens with an organza like this because of the warp and weft of that particular material. When you just shift it a little bit, it starts to do another kind of visual dance for you. That's just like as you move around, it's such a treat. So you got to come and look closely.
Yes, yeah, great. All right, this work is Susan Avishai. It's called Where Do the Children Play? So this is more pictorial. This is supposed to represent kind of the rubble of buildings after conflict, and there's kind of this smoke. So I think that the artist was affected by images of conflict and just kind of thinking about how that affects children and where do they play if their neighborhood looks like this.
Yeah, and to so beautifully render something so devastating, the way that it's put together at the base and through that smoke, there are these really beautiful moments that happen there that, that crush of bars, you can imagine the rubble after bombings, and it's just beautifully articulated. And also the way that she has quilted it, it's not exactly straight lines. It also kind of adds to the kind of frenzy that you see within that.
And the brokenness. I also, formally speaking to, if you look up at the kind of sky, the top and the edges, these are all very clean edges, and then you get down here, and this is like, it starts to break the frame, right? And even like the string and the thread, you can just really sense that kind of crumble happening.
And the heft of it.
The weight of it, for sure.
Yeah. And even the kind of the raw edges as well that you have here versus the, very clean edges elsewhere.
Yeah, you really get lost in this one.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, this piece is Tanti. It's called Will You Love Me When I'm Blue? This won a Jurors Award, so a prestigious honor. And yeah, when I look at this one, I see kind of a figure here. I can like this head, there's a mouth, a nose, maybe an eye. And so this is a moment where a quilter uses quilting as an opportunity to express their personality and to express their views and their emotions. So I kind of look at this as like, this artist is like letting themselves be blue, letting them be sad, and just kind of asking for space, you know, in a relationship, and just saying like, it's okay that I get sad, let me just do my thing. I'm imagining, you know, maybe if she does feel blue, she starts to quilt to like feel better,
sure.
right? So I think quilting as an outlet for joy is really special.
Yeah. I also really appreciate the kind of frenzy that you have around here in the quilting. So there's not only a graphic quality, but a narrative quality, as you said, to this. And it's represented not only in those graphic elements of like the shape of the humanoid person, but it's also the order outside versus the quilting within, and how the artist selected color. They could have done all shades of blue, but have this really kind of cavernous brown that the person is in this bubble within. So it's really, it's something that you can sit with for a while. Also, all these tiny little pieces. Overview, you see it as one large graphic image, but it is made up of so many tiny little things. And you will see this throughout the exhibition. Just phenomenal hand skills.
Yes, so there's a lot of machine quilting and also hand stitching. And there are moments where there's machine quilting that is so tight and close together that it really builds up and becomes its own color. And then there's even this tiny little hand stitching where each stitch is kind of like a little paintbrush mark. So that's really special.
So speaking of hand stitching, we have pretty phenomenal piece that represents that. That is also was voted by the jurors as Best in Show.
Yes, so this won the most prestigious award. This is Shinhi Chin. I just also want to say that this artist is a juror for the Quilt National 2027. The title of this work is Latin for greenness, and that is such a good title for it. So when you are looking at this piece from far away, it really does look like a painting. Like it reads as a painting. There's this beautiful essence of light coming through the tree canopy, and then the closer and closer and closer you get to it, you realize that all of this color is just built up by numerous numbers of colors of thread, different types of thread, different thickness, and it just becomes so jam-packed you can barely even see the fabric underneath it. And it's just, I imagine just the amount of time that this took, days, weeks, maybe even months, right?
For sure. What I love too about this is that it pushes the boundary of the quilt, right? The two fabric-like bits that are stitched together. So it's using a recycled blanket and all sorts of threads. And this is really unique to this artist too. You were talking a little earlier with me about how this is this artist's voice. They are known for this style. So you can imagine like how many years it took to develop this particular approach and how expertly they execute this.
Absolutely.
And I just revel in the idea of imagining how this artist is doing this. Did they lay out the first layer? Is this done, with the help of gravity?
Right.
Or is it like against a wall? How in the world is she doing this?
Yeah.
And I'm just, trying to put myself in their place, and it kind of puts you on your heels to imagine.
It does, because when you're this close to it, it becomes so abstracted, right? And so obviously the artist will have to do some, but then really go and take at least 15 steps back. So that kind of back and forth of the work is really impressive.
So something that we were chatting about a little bit earlier was time as material. So all of these pieces really have time as a material. You have to think about that in any quilt that's made, really, because it's such a labor-intensive bit. And then those that choose to do hand quilting, even more so.
Even more so, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about that and how, if honestly, people can probably only work on a quilt maybe 2 to 3 hours max at a time, and then you start to kind of get a little bit of cramps. So yeah, just to take that time in between studio practice and all the things that happen to you within a couple hours or day or even a week before you return back to the studio, all of that has an impact on the next move that the artist makes. So it's kind of, yeah, it shows time over time too.
Absolutely. So something that we chat about a lot in our tours of exhibitions is the object association and the flow of an exhibition. So here I think we have a really great example. There's this tiny little hole here, this lovely green that emanates, and then we come over here and there's a much larger hole in this piece by Laurie Jones. Can you tell us a little bit about this piece?
Yes, this is called Unfolding Green. Yeah, this is a nice segue. So this artist really wanted to, literally kind of break the mold, get out of the box. Instead of, a lot of these quilts are in a kind of a rectangular frame. This artist chose to go very much against that. So there's no parallel edge. And then, yeah, there's like a hole right in the middle. This one's really great too. There's a lot of pattern that is made through the stitching. So this is free motion stitching. So if we want to get in the weeds about that a little bit, usually on a sewing machine, when you sew, it will just go in a straight line. The machine is made to get a very straight line. You can drop the dog feed, which are the gears that grip the fabric, and then your hands are the ones that control where the thread is going. So essentially, when people do free motion quilting, they're using the thread as a way to draw on the fabric. So we see that a lot here. All these different patterns, it's like they were drawing with thread.
The precision still that happens is phenomenal.
Yes.
I also really appreciate that within this piece, it's not a perfect edge. They have a bit of a raw edge with all of that precision. So it's a really nice juxtaposition for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a way to honor the material, I think, too.
All right. Continuing in the vein of green.
Yes. Okay. Oh, yes. This is
Linda Steele.
Linda Steele. This piece is called Talk to Me.
Oh. Communication breakdown,
but it says talk to me. So this artist is an improv quilter, meaning that they kind of work with shapes on hand and just start putting little mini compositions together. So the way this artist works is first she focused on the text, so the words talk to me, and then started piecing in other pieces of fabric to go with it. This is kind of a social commentary on our use of technology as a society now and how most people now are really on their phones a lot. So this is a plea, like, just look at me in the face and talk to me. I see this as kind of like maybe broken glass or like a shattered phone or something, just saying like, put your phone down. So yeah, I think this piece is definitely of the moment. And then if we talk about technical things and skill, this also is all free motion quilting, lots of different patterns in here. So that's another thing that quilting really lends itself to is very close looking and encouraging people to just get really, really close and see like the length of a stitch and where it goes.
The differences of the quilting patterns within this are astounding because this is all pieced together and then they do that. So they're really staying within bounds to give you all these different, so imagining, again, trying to place myself in the artist's shoes. Wow.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. We have some words in this one too. This is Ruth Devos.
Yes.
Wings of Freedom.
Wings of Freedom. This piece is so fun, so playful. It's illustrative. There's this beautiful overlap of these children playing and the crows. The artist was really focused on kind of talking about shifting perspective. So I'm kind of imagining like the bird's eye view and then like a child's view. Technically what's happening in here is very, very incredible. So this is a nice comparison. The one we just talked about is improv quilting. This is very, very intentional. There had to be a lot of plans made. Also, this is all pieced together and there is this like kind of dark gray outline around the figures. This is so technically challenging. Like when I saw this up close, I mean, I was just shocked. And then where these lines cross over other lines, the artist highlights that with little pops of color. Like she wants quilters specifically to know, like, I know exactly what I'm doing. This technically is so difficult to do, to make all corners match up. So I am just like floored by the technical skill of this one. There's also a lot of just fun kind of drawing elements here too. Like the artist paints screen prints on the fabric. So yeah, there's so much. I feel like we could look at this one for an hour.
Yeah, this does feel very much like a quilter's quilt, because it's using all of the ways.
Yes.
So there's hand quilting, there's machine quilting, the extraordinary expertise of that overlap and the tininess of it. But yeah.
And also there's different kinds of material. There's linen, there's cotton, there's also this kind of thick corduroy. And it's pretty hard to join a thinner and thicker material together. So really a lot of expertise happening in this piece.
So speaking of, moving through, we have some really abstract works, some more illustrative works. And so this illustrative one peeks around the corner, and we have another way of illustrating, I think, that's really lovely. So tell us about Heidi's work.
This work is Heidi Park's, and like you said, it is also illustrative. From afar, these seem kind of like these disparate moments happening. There are small patterns of dots, there's an arm, there's some rabbits, there's a list of words. These are her diary quilts. So I think about this as almost like a personal sketchbook, but in a quilt. So this kind of stream of consciousness idea, and she can really meditate on the iconography or also the material. So this work is all done by hand. So it's hand pieced and it's hand quilted. She also won the award for best handwork.
Makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Heidi is very, like most quilters, very interested in material and material memory. Fabric is just, it's imbued with memory, right? Like from the moment we're born, we're wrapped up in a blanket, we live in clothes all day. We're often touching clothes, right? So her work is a lot. She uses a lot of recycled materials. There's like a shirt from her father, silk from a wedding dress, maybe fabric from travels. So I'm imagining that since this is a diary quilt, as she is hand stitching, labor intensive, she can really meditate. Like if it's her father's quilt, she can think about her dad, right? And just again, similar to the other piece I was talking about, I really like to think that when people are making quilts, they're happy, and I think that we all could use a little more joy in our lives.
Absolutely. This is one of the quilts that it is so hard for me to resist touching.
Yes,
like you just you see those little pillows stitched in, and there's
the texture.
The texture is just stunning. And there's also these quiet moments that I think are so lovely, where you could just have one big piece of this punchy pink, but either by necessity or by artists' idea, and maybe both, there are these, moments where it kind of circles this particular illustration of a rabbit. And so then I start to build stories.
Yeah.
The other thing that this artist does really well is take you through abstraction and narration and allows for you to stay within the quilt, right? She has these beautiful lines that really keep your eye within the piece. This, if you didn't have this yellow here, this would lead your eye right out of the piece. So the artist is really smart about design and how they're navigating that with the viewer. The other thing that softens it are these big, appliqued and quilted in pieces. It's just phenomenally done, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just something that you can really get lost and it begs for close looking. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I just want to build stories.
Yeah.
So, and like those waves that they have in there, and then this.
Yes.
It's delectable. All right. So let's go across the way here.
Yeah.
So we have that is very much, hand quilted. to this. Tell us about this. What's the big
Yeah.
difference here?
Yes, this is Denise Roberts. This is machine pieced and machine quilted. So this is a lot tighter, right? The edges are a lot cleaner than maybe something that's hand pieced. And then the machine quilted, really, really tight lines. And again, it kind of just gives this overall texture so that I am now really focusing on the red, beautiful strands.
And the formal
happening.
qualities. And
Yes.
so, you can look from far away and see the design qualities of that and like enjoy the visual, the graphic qualities of that. But then you get really close and you see these tiny little pieces of different colors, and the technical proficiency required in order to do something like this
Yes.
is bonkers.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, even like the shifts in red is so
Ooh, yeah.
nice. And I think from far away too, it's really, it really has a lot of atmosphere and depth to it. When I look at it from far away, I kind of read the darker red as shadows, the brighter red as highlights, and I
Absolutely.
can almost imagine these just,
Oh, yeah.
Flowing.
It's almost Chutes and Ladders-esque.
Yeah, yes, right.
And so we'll flip back over to this piece over here. So this follows a historical kind of quilting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Tell us about it.
This references like the crazy quilts of the 1920s to 40s, which crazy quilts were made out of scrap fabric, mostly of like wool clothing, which was we have to remember that when we think about like traditional quilts, fabric was so expensive. Now fabric is the most abundant material in the world. Like we keep making it and making it. So this crazy quilts used scrap fabrics to make a larger piece of fabric, so out of necessity. This piece is called That's Nuts. This artist has a son who is an autistic person, and this piece is about navigating the healthcare system. She says she feels like a squirrel who's just constantly chasing nuts, squirreling them away, and just running all over the place. So there's a lot of really beautiful hand embroidery done here. Lots of squirrels, lots of text. It's like there's like audio from a phone call saying like, if you are on hold, press 1. If you're collecting nuts, press 2. So it's just like it's kind of tongue in cheek, but very, very real.
There's a real frenzy to this.
Yes.
That I think matches so well to the calmness of the other very hand-pieced work. It's really lovely to have them, also color family-wise, next to each other, to have this relief of more calm moments or like blank space to a piece like this that is a wash
Yes.
in frenetic energy.
Oh yes, maximalism, right?
Maximalism
more
to
is
the
more.
max.
Yes, yeah. Velvet and silk and wool and just all the colors
And you mentioned it's really hard, again, to bind those different
fabrics together. Absolutely,
So-
yeah.
Again, pretty phenomenal.
Pretty great technique. Yep.
So speaking of using scraps,
Yes.
we come over here.
Yes. So this is also kind of a fun play on quilt blocks too. So traditionally, quilts were made sections at a time. They're called quilt blocks, right? And the artist would make, let's say, 25 quilt blocks, about 10 inches by 10 inches, and then sew those all together. So this is, I think, kind of a nod to quilt blocks one. It's 100 small squares, and then the artist used just scraps from other quilts that she made, just kind of collect scraps, which most quilters do, and then made them into these itty bitty tiny quilts. So each piece is either pieced or appliqued and then actually quilted. So it's like about the size of my hand. And each piece is kind of its own little narrative. Most of them have figures or animals here. And it's a delight to look at.
Yeah. It feels almost like little Polaroids.
Yeah.
Like these little slices in time that are then abstracted. It is also just such a treat to come upon it and think about it as a whole, as a quilt,
right.
and to also recognize, it kind of helps you recognize the work of quilting, the many, many pieces to the whole.
Exactly, yeah.
And so speaking of many, many, many pieces to a whole, perhaps we can come over to the sculptural quilts.
Yes. This is Kathy York. And this is, in this exhibition, well, one of 2 sculptural works. This is really exciting because you can actually, it's meant to be interacted with. So there are these little tiny holes, and Kat, if you want to, you could look through me and you can see my eyes.
I can see you.
So this piece is kind of referencing like maybe the darker side of the internet and like who's watching who. And if you look inside here too, you will see these little kind of football shapes of eyeballs. So all these different eyes watching. And this is just, it's also really fun to see a quilt in 3 dimensions like this, isn't it?
It is. It is. But to also recognize that these are all cubes.
Yeah, right.
So they made, what is that, 6 sides? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, it's more than that. Oh, counting is hard. No, it's 6.
Yeah.
So 6 sides for each of these coming together to make this larger.
Yeah.
And so then it also really has a great structure to it.
Absolutely. So it's, you can't see from the outside, but if you look inside, it must be 10 layers this way and then 10 layers that way as well. So just lots of unseen labor, which also I would definitely reference as quilts.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
lots of labor.
Stunning.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
great.
that brings us to our next sculptural work. I mean, they're really all
Yes.
sculptural, to
Yes.
be honest.
Yeah. Right. They are. Yes.
But
yeah.
exhibited as
Yes,
sculpture.
Right. So this is Patty Kennedy Zaffred. I really love this. This is, she calls these books. So these can be like, you know, you could tighten this and pack it really something small. You can kind of display it in a curved piece. She uses a technique where she takes photographs and then prints the photographs on fabric. There's different kinds of material. She prints on cotton or also organza. Something that's kind of notable about her work is she used to make very, very large quilts. And when you quilt a large quilt, first you have to do, it's called baste a quilt, and you have to safety pin all the layers together before you pin it. The easiest way to do that is on a floor. So you have to move all your furniture, lay your quilt on the floor, get on your hands and knees and baste it. And I've heard this artist talk about how in her older age, it's getting harder for her to get on the floor and maybe to work larger. So she's decided to really, really scale down something that is small enough she could work on her lap or on a tabletop.
Love
and
it.
I just love that like recognition of like, okay, my body's changing, so my work changes too, you know?
What a
It's really
treat.
great. Yeah.
Worth a
Yes.
closer look, to be sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so many ways you can view it.
Exactly. And this is about like a supermarket in Italy. So it's all these like fun, beautiful fruit and vegetables. But I also like because, I mean, even the form of this is like an accordion. And I think about it getting scrunched together, and I think about being really tight, close to somebody at the market, right? And just kind of the frenzy of a market. So that's really fun.
So next we'll pop over to this piece here.
All right, this is Gabrielle McIntosh. It's called Precarious Balance. So I like to read this as a formal composition, right? I mean, the color choices are excellent. I see these kind of like tall, precarious, almost tower-like things. I see kind of gears, but I don't know, I also see kind of starting to fall over. So there's just like a lot of attention with balance.
It's got a lot of movement happening in it. It makes you feel like it might fall out of the picture.
Exactly, yeah. This piece is machine quilted, and I think I just want to, instead of, we're talking about like some pieces that are machine quilted are all on the parallel lines together, but this one, the artist is really following the color and the shapes, so the direction of quilting changes based on the color and shape, which is nice.
It's fantastic. And that'll pull us around to another piece.
Yes, this is Louise silk. It's kind of hard to tell maybe, but there's kind of an opening right here, and this like it could be worn as like a wearable object, right? These are made from like discarded clothing. I can see like a Steelers logo right here. I can see like a silk tie pattern. So I don't know, I just think about like, oh, whose clothes were these? What was the relationship that person had? So there's something about that that's nice to think about. These were clothes on someone's body. She cut them up and made something else to wear.
This artist is for sure Pittsburgh proud.
Yes.
They are really speaking about their place, and it's just such a treat to see those old techniques of the binding. I have quilts from my family where this little detail of the string tied on top
Yeah.
is it's just, for me, it's super nostalgic. It just feels like, oh, this is handmade. This is a family piece.
Right.
That's what this feels like to me. This is going to be passed down in their family. And, if you get to wear the mantle, then like you're the biggest Steelers fan there is, I guess, right?
And like you said, there are moments where like threads are sticking out, right? They're not cut off. Because we do want to think about like, we are humans. We have thumbs that kind of separates us, right? Like we make things that makes us human. And just to think the act of tying a knot and just how simple that and human that is. So yeah, that's really beautiful. Also, I see she signed her name, Silk, which is really beautiful. A lot of quilters usually put a label on the back, but there are a few quilters that like sign it like a painting, like put my name right on front, which I love.
Yeah. It's a treat.
Right. Yes.
So around this corner.
Oh, yes, I love this piece. This is Loren's. This piece is called Abundance. Oh my gosh, isn't it incredible?
It is abundant.
It is. This is a lot of improv quilting, but it is also representational, obviously, of flowers and other floral elements. But man, I just go to this beautiful flower, and the technique here is so intense. So if you come on in here, you can see all these alternating colors. Each stripe is what, 1/4 of an inch wide? Those all have to be sewn together. I mean, within like the size of a bookmark, there's maybe 20 different pieces of fabric. That is so labor intensive, so time intensive. And just, I feel like I could just look at this quilt every time I see it, I see something new, you know?
Mm-hmm. I love the fold of this leaf up here, the way that she describes form.
Yeah.
So she's describing form in a variety of places. She's honoring historical quilts. She's got this visual interest happening with the way that she's pieced these colors and quilted over them.
Yeah.
Like this raucous color that still describes something that you can imagine in person, but are antithetical to nature.
Yes, yeah.
It's just such a treat to, I just, like that pop of pink and teal. You can imagine a sunset or a dawn that has those punching forward. Maybe not exactly that way, but it excites the memory, and it also, the larger than life flower.
Yeah. You just want to dive in like a bee, right?
Just want to dive in.
Yeah.
It's such a treat. So in this area, we have many kind of circular things.
Yes, yeah. I was
This
just
is the
thinking
biggest circle we have.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure.
Man, I love this piece, and I love this piece in this gallery because you get such a faraway view from it, and it is like, it's a large circle. It's almost like an eye that kind of draws you in. Jennifer Candon is the artist here, just formally, I am just mesmerized by this. It's kind of also this repeating shape. They all are going the same direction. So all the curve is on that right side, and it's just such this graceful curve that my eye can just kind of keep following. I just feel like it's super meditative, almost like a big medallion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This artist also, similar to Heidi Parks, is very aware of fabric. A lot of this fabric were old clothes from her family, which is really nice.
Yeah. And I was chatting with someone earlier about, I really don't think there is a repetition of color combinations in this piece.
Oh, wow, yeah. Within
which
each
is
section.
Also astounding to recognize.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of planning.
It does, yeah.
And the other thing that I really enjoy about this is that they do the free motion quilting on this. So you don't have the rigidity of exactly straight line. And I think that really adds to this. Like there is so much technical proficiency in this, including that freehand, because there are all these horizontal and parallel lines. They get a little squishy and a little bit wider, which I think, that visual interest is so necessary within the work.
Absolutely.
But it also is astounding
Yeah,
that they can do that.
But
So-
it also like shows, like we were talking about, like a human made this. Like we are
Yes.
not perfect. Like even though there is this kind of this grid, but yeah, things get a little wobbly sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love this piece. Okay, this is Sandra Wook. It's called Daybreak. This piece is really exciting. It has a lot of energy. It also, it might be hard to tell from far away, but there's a lot of like very small components to it, like these little metal pieces, and they are attached by Velcro, which is really fun. The artist references Jack Whitten and Louise Nevelson as inspiration, and I'm like, oh yes. So it's like, this is a perfect example of showing how Quilt National did exactly what it intended to do so.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, this piece is in conversation with modern painting and sculpture, right?
Yeah, wonderful. What a treat.
Okay, this piece, very large too.
Very large.
This is Ann Wu. This, I think, does a nice honor to traditional quilt and quilt blocks, right? So each of these small pieces were all the same size and shape. So it's all the same kind of pattern, and then it's just multiplied and multiplied and multiplied to get bigger and bigger. So yeah, this like the technical skill in this is very incredible.
It is. It's also really playful.
Yeah, yeah.
So however tight it is, you've also got this representation of sushi in all of these blocks. And then the actual quilting is the outline of fish.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
is so cute.
I'm so cute. And like, these little even X's on their eyes. And the quilting too, the fish are done in like a pink or a green, not a white. And so yeah, like it's also, yeah, there's so much color happening.
It's very subtle.
Yeah, so subtle.
Like this is one of those pieces that you're really rewarded the longer you take with it.
Yes.
You'll discover little bits and pieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we come around to this piece here.
Yes.
And this is Award of Excellence.
Yes, this is Wendy Richardson. This is called Children of War. So similar to the other piece we were talking about, just kind of the devastation that how children are involved in war crimes, and these crosses represent the children. So a way that quilts are used kind of as a way to talk about politics.
And this is another artist that signs on the
name.
front.
Yep, yeah.
But I also really love, it's really beautifully done. It's got atmospheric perspective happening. So these feel very much in the forefront. And then even to the sky, it's still a cross, but it's become the sky.
Yeah.
And then here in this corner, there's a rough edge. And I think that's a really kind of nice, subtle way of reminding ourselves of our fragility.
Yeah, yeah. And how it could unravel if we're not careful, right?
Yeah. And so here we have another Ohio artist.
Yes, another Ohio artist. This is Susan Shy. This person also works a lot like with politics, is influenced by current events. So there's a lot of references to what was happening in 2024 when this was made. This artist is also known for doing all this writing.
Absolutely.
Which is just kind of fun to just like get in close. It's almost like reading someone's diary. Right? It's like, what do you
And
think?
these are really, these are paintings.
Yes, absolutely.
Truly.
True, yes.
And then she has this series that are working with tarot. So this being the 9 of wooden spoons, I love the idea of seeing all of her works together and, experiencing this kind of onslaught of words and this idea of tarot. It has a truly magical feel to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so over here we have Susan.
Yeah, Susan Lapham. Man, this one, it's really, the color in this is exquisite. And so when I look at this, I'm also looking at kind of formally like a painting. The dark and large shapes really stand out in the foreground. The more midtones are starting to recede, and then these lighter pastel colors really start to recede into the background. It just feels so light and airy. I really love it. This piece is also free motion quilted, and the quilting lines are very, very, very tight together. And the thread that they used is blue, so it kind of gives this kind of very light wash of blue, which is very complementary of the other colors with it.
And similar to the nice large piece that we have out front as well, there are a lot of curved lines here.
Yes, right.
The technical proficiency within that, again, on all of these pieces is astounding.
Yes, absolutely.
But that there's a quietness to this piece that I think is just really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's they're pretty humble, right? Like all these pieces that require so much technical proficiency, but there's something just so humble. And maybe it's because it's the fabric and the softness of it, but it's powerful.
It is. Come over to another Ohio artist.
Yes, this is another Athens person. This is Danette Pratt. Gosh, this is so painterly. It's
so painterly.
And it's so raw and emotional. This artist dyes a lot of her own fabric. Using
Natural dyes.
Natural dyes, yep. Some indigo happening. And then she talks about how in 2020, 2021, she was keeping a sketchbook and a diary. So for this quilt, she was referring back to those emotions and those drawings of just like what is going on. And I think that's portrayed so well here. It's called Scream. So I'm just like, yeah, you can really feel that energy. And then, yeah, there's like a lot of really beautiful drawing and painterly qualities happening. And then if you get up close too, there's this beautiful like needle punch happening here, and this beautiful technique of outlining the face. It's just really delicate and exquisite.
Yeah.
And then this piece also, it has a raw edge, which kind of, I think, just really emphasizes that raw emotion.
Yeah. And the amount of handwork in this, all of these stitches, these hand stitches, just really beautiful, the way that they describe the shape and like outline the fingers and come around. It's just a really beautiful description of form in the way that she uses the puff out of this and hand stitched together. It's another one of those that is really hard to not touch.
Yes, I know, yes, yeah, right. It's like silky and yeah, you want to touch it.
All right.
All right, this is Cara Gelati. This is really fun. Like, definitely references pop art to me. This technique, is this pieced or applique? It looks like it's pieced. Okay,
pieced.
Yeah. Which is again amazing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, and just really fun pops of color in the spiral.
It also really references the history of quilting.
Absolutely.
In that these are blocks.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. So like each one of this is a block
Just
combined.
rotated.
Yeah, rotated. So
it has a real pinwheel feel to it.
Yeah.
I also love this really colorful pop on the
yes,
edge. That
absolutely.
It speaks beautifully within the space as well. These kind of circular references that are throughout this area.
Yeah.
Super punchy and lovely, and is a really nice foil to this really fun piece we have by John.
Yeah, this is John Leffelholtz, who is also from Athens, Ohio. So this was the piece that, people would come up to me at Quilt National and say, that's not a quilt, it shouldn't be in the show. And I said, actually, it is a quilt. So we can see that there are at least 2 layers of fabric here. They are stitched together. The thread is monofilament, so it's pretty invisible to see. But what's really different about this piece is the use of light. And the light actually has sound sensors in it. And so as I'm talking, the light is responding to my voice, which is fun. I also like to think about, so in our definition of quilt, it has to be 2 layers of fabric, thread piercing the layers of fabric. I also think about how the light is piercing the fabric too. So this kind of thinking about materials more conceptually.
Yeah. So not only is it the light piercing that, but as thinking about the historical way that we would think about quilts and how typically we would have physical involvement, whether it's on a bed or perhaps on a wall to help buffer sound or warm space. John's work requires interaction in order for that to be the piece that it is. So there's this conceptual kind of bleed through that's really fun and
pushing the boundaries.
Just pushing those
which
boundaries.
Is what we're all about,
It's such a treat. So this has been a tour of Quilt National 2025 with Exhibitions Director Erin Mckenna. Thank you so much for joining us for the Ohio Arts Council's Riffe Gallery Tour. Thank you to our governor, the legislature, and the Ohio Arts Council's board, all who support the arts in Ohio and this great space. Thanks for being with us.